Mm-hmm. Okay, wonderful.
Okay. So welcome everybody. It's really great to have you with us today. We're going to be talking about kind of the intersection of neuroscience and responsible AI in corporate learning, certainly business focused learning, and how we can get measurable impact from that. So we're going to talk a little bit about the brain science and ethical AI, how that can really change learning experiences. We want to talk about strategies to create adaptive learning cultures, and I think AI is very important there. And then designing AI-powered neuroscience-founded solutions that really align with organizational goals. So that's our kind of, the key messages we're going to have. First of all, Sarah and I, for those of you who don't know us, we'll just introduce ourselves, if that's okay. So Sarah, would you like to start?
Thank you, Stella. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're calling in from. My name is Sarah Lloyd Favaro, and I currently have my own venture. It's called Learn Bold Global Responsible AI. I focus a lot on learning and development in the AI space due to the fact that I've had a history in learning and development. I've really gotten my start even at the intersection of technology and training, and then done a lot of different things over the years in companies big and small, nonprofits, federal government. So this is something, when I met Stella, I just wanted to explore these different ideas. We had a lot in common. She has an amazing product and platform that she shared with me, and we've been having a lot of interesting conversations on learning and AI. So we wanted to open it up and have a broader conversation with our community. So that's me in a nutshell. Let me pass it back to you, Stella, so you can introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So I'm Stella Collins. I'm currently Chief Learning Officer and co-founder at Stella Labs, but I'm the author of Neuroscience for Learning and Development, which is my real passion. How do we use science to help us work better at work, including learning? I'm a keynote speaker. I'm a trainer. I've worked with Joanna before. So I'm a trainer as well, and I do consultancy with organizations to help them get the most from their learning. So I do learning audits, looking at the impact that they're having, making recommendations that generally seem to have a really good output. So that's who I am. Sarah, do you want to turn off the slides now? We're not really working on slides here. We're just going to focus on conversation. And we're really encouraging you to join in the conversation. We really want to hear from you as well as from Sarah and I. I wouldn't say we've scripted it. We've had some quite good conversations about where we plan to go, but we're really curious about, your thoughts, your thinking, your experiences, and, what maybe if we can answer questions or solve any problems for you, that's also great. But, there's a huge community here of people with smart backgrounds, and we'll have lots of ideas. So please, help each other to share each other's challenges too. So I think the first question we'll just ask really is, what do you think are the biggest organizational challenges that you're either facing in your own organization, or perhaps if you're in consulting, you're seeing from other organizations? What are the challenges you're experiencing kind of right now around the learning theme? You can put that in the chat, or you can call out.
Oh, I put it in. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, great, that's great. We haven't scripted this, so what happens is what happens.
I think, well, I don't mind chipping in first, if that's okay. I think what I'm seeing and to a degree experiencing from a lot of people is fear and uncertainty, to be honest with you. I think that's the biggest thing, is people are struggling to get to grips with how AI best fits into this space and how we use it effectively. What does it mean for people's roles? How can we maximize it? So I think what I'm hearing back from a lot of so we would work in a consultancy space really, and training. So a lot of the clients we work with is just, I don't know what to do, I think is the main starting point.
Quite a lot of this going on, isn't there, in terms of decision making? Nobody's quite sure of where to go next.
Yeah.
Thanks. What else are people seeing? So let's see what we've got in the chat here. So Ezra, you say people thinking AI is just another trend. Oh, perhaps you want to expand on that one a little bit.
Hi everyone, currently I'm driving, so I won't be able to attend that way. But the thing is, yes, people are afraid, and also some of my clients are thinking this is just another bubble which is going to pop in a while. So again, I'm here listening, and I will be trying as much as also interacting, but I'm driving. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
And that's
I think,
certainly
yeah, I experienced both of these because especially the first one, it's just so, how do you get started? There's so many, possible ways. How do you get together with your IT people, the people who are doing AI in the organization, so you make sure that the learning and development or training, they're moving ahead in the same direction, but you're also checking in on all the things like AI governance, data security, protecting proprietary information and all of those types of questions. So we'll definitely touch on some of those different things. One of the things, and keep putting what your answers to this question in the chat will be, and we'll come back to any things we haven't touched on. So one of the things that we wanted to start off with is I actually read or I got an article even this morning about it that I'll put in the chat, this link when I have a moment, but it's about whether AI is making us stupid. Is it making us irrelevant? I think with lots of technology, and I don't know, I can even see this in myself, this starting to get a dependency on using my LLMs, the chat GPTs, the Claudes, the Geminis, the Perplexities. Whereas, just a couple years ago, obviously I wasn't using those types of tools. And now they just bring so many time savers to me that I start to use them even for mundane tasks, which I guess is kind of the point. But that is something that I think several people have proposed, is that there's a lack perhaps of also relying too much on these technologies and not having the ability to impose one's critical thinking, since we know of some of the dangers of using AI without that human in the loop, or just relying blindly on the outputs. So I'll let other people talk about this question, especially Stella. I'll open it to you first and see what you have to say. And while you're talking, I'll also put the link to this article that I saw this morning. Oh, it's not an article, it's actually a research paper. So Stella, what's your take on this?
So I think it's really interesting, and I've actually started to ask the question myself. Is it making us stupid? And I've started to do some, kind of research into what research is out there about what AI is actually doing to our brain, because our brains are hugely neuroplastic. They will change in, the context of the environment, the world in which we find ourselves. That's how humans evolve. And I am beginning to find some quite interesting research that says, certainly digital technology has already shifted our brains, but there's coming up to be some interesting research now that says, it seems that AI is creating changes in our hippocampus, for instance, which is relevant for memory, that there is less activity in our hippocampus, so there's less memory storage going on. But there's more activity in our frontal cortex, which is that kind of initial processing thinking, hopefully some critical thinking going on. And the challenge with that is our brains evolved to kind of stop using our cerebral cortex too much because it's really energy hungry. And I think that's why people are tired and strained and stressed, because they're using that part of their brains more than the part of their brains that are actually much more efficient for processing things that are unconscious and we can do without having to think about them. We can do them more automatically. So there's some distinct changes there. As Sarah says, the critical thinking piece, if we start to rely on the AI having all the information and we start to lose the knowledge, actually we can't critically think anymore because we haven't got, or we won't have, the knowledge to make those critical decisions. So it's really important that we do continue to use our brain. I've just written a blog, and I'm going to write a little mini series of blogs. So if you want to check out our website, which I'll put in the link a little bit later, I'm starting to write some blogs about A, what are the differences we're beginning to see, but B, what can you do yourself to make sure you don't lose your critical thinking, to make sure you continue to, stretch your hippocampus. It needs to be exercised. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. So those are the things I'm beginning to find and to see and to think are interesting. So yeah, it'd be great to hear what anybody else might have to say. Go ahead, Reed.
Yeah, I wonder about even just, studying with AI and being prompted, which is a very helpful thing to get going, but then what it does to the lack of synapses that are happening in the brain, and everything that's endogenous. The canals that we're supposed to be building in order to learn and keep that memory. And yeah, I found prompts from AI to be very helpful, but I wonder in the long term how helpful it really is.
Yeah. Those are, I think it's just a quandary. On the one hand, you want to stay current and be on the edge of this technology and leverage it to its possibilities. But on the other hand, doing so sometimes then creates that dependence and like, oh, well, it's almost like a forgetting curve of how to be independent and not use it as a crutch. I kind of think back to the analogy of COVID when, even kids who had to stay home, and do their online learning and everything. And I was talking to parents of a child who was graduating college, and they were even saying, kind of he never recovered from that social isolation. And it just, the fact of not having that ability to practice interacting with other kids, just by the fact of what was happening in society, prevented that development and that growth. So I think for children in particular, it's like you said, Reed, those are the actual synapses that need to be happening to grow our brains and in neuroscience. And not to say that we're not moving in the right direction. I mean, for example, I don't use paper maps anymore, and I'm still surviving. But it's just a good question, especially with the rate of the technology, how fast it moves to the point where, you've got Sam Altman talking about AGI and is already here, and there's just so much happening, and it just seems to be exponentially speeding up. It's a bit of a something to ponder about. So I'm curious if anybody else has, I'm the first to admit, I feel like I'm a little bit dependent now on some of the tools just for individuals. I don't know if anybody else has felt that way or.
I had another sort of experience recently where I realized that the AI was overwhelming me. I was just trying to get it to help me to write a blog. And I thought, yeah, this would be great. I'll get some information from AI. I had a lot of the information already in my head, but I thought I'll just pull it together. And they ended up with so much information that then I was overwhelmed, and I actually found it really difficult to decide. I couldn't make a decision about what to do because, of course, you ask the same question twice and it gives you two different answers. And then I was really lost. So I then had to go back to, yeah, but what do I actually know? What do I know makes sense? And start with that and kind of say to the AI, go away, you've just confused me. So I think that'll be another interesting area that John Taylor's been talking in the UK, has been talking about, this overwhelm of content that AI is going to generate, and he calls it a beige wave that's going to overtake us. And I think we need to be careful that, we might just overwhelm ourselves with so much stuff that we become paralyzed and we can't do anything.
Right. Does somebody else? Yes. Hi, Geneva. How are you?
Hi.
So glad you could
Good,
come.
good. Yeah. I think my perspective is like, I don't know, AI is still just very much, it's probably one of the best tools that I've ever had, but it's still nonetheless a tool, and that's how I approach it. Um, and I approach it from the lens of like, what problem am I trying to solve? If I'm not solving a problem, then it's like, what am I using it for? Like, or if it's a problem that I know I can solve myself without using it, that's kind of like how I balance that and balance that overwhelm or that dependency, because it's like some things you can check in with yourself and it's like, yeah, I can easily do this myself too.
Right.
So I think yeah, I just keep like what problem I'm trying to solve. And I think that's because I'm already working in technology. I've worked in technology for the past decade. So that's how we always approached everything prior to AI. So it's kind of like just use the same thinking.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's more of my thinking time is going into making sure I prompt it with the right things than actually thinking about the content. So I agree, Jeannie. I think if you are making sure that your start point is right and your question is right, so there's more thought time going into that. Whereas before, if I wasn't using AI, I'd probably just dive in and read lots of stuff and then work my way through it. But actually making sure that the prompts are right is, I think, is really important. Although
Right.
it's so interesting to see kind of what you use it for that you might not have thought about. So we are planning a road trip this summer. And rather than actually sitting and looking at lots of travel websites, I think my husband had just typed the whole lot into ChatGPT and went, tell us where to go. We're still having that debate about the right location, but it was, he
Yeah,
suddenly went, oh, there you go.
Mhm.
I did the same thing visiting Paris. I wanted to like do vintage shopping, but I didn't want to dedicate my thinking time to like, where am I gonna shop in Paris? Vintage,
Mhm.
thrifting. I can
Right.
just have it do all of that and then get my time back. I think like cognitive load is so important to me, especially like as a mom and having young kids. I'm using AI to like lessen that cognitive load
Mhm.
because prior to AI, I was very overwhelmed with cognitive load and just like all the things to think about all the time. So now it's like less things, way less things to think about because that can think of some lower level tasks and then I
Mhm.
can free up my mental space.
That was one of the research points I came across, was that if you use it for low-level tasks that are stretching your mind, that are giving you overload, and use
Mhm.
your brain for the tough stuff, the stuff that's important, that will actually help you to continue to keep your critical thinking skills, your decision-making skills. So I think that's a really valuable insight there. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that it's helping that cognitive load and burden, especially in today's day. The article that I put in the chat is, I think, entitled "The Impact of Generative AI on Critical Thinking." And it's interesting, it's really talking about knowledge workers, which is funny, Stella, that we were talking about this before everyone came on, that we should call them application workers, not knowledge workers, right? Because like it doesn't really matter how much you know, but if you can't apply that knowledge, what are you doing on the job? But I think I guess the takeaway of the article that I found, and not surprising, obviously, but it kind of confirmed my hypothesis, is that those who trust AI more tend to engage in less critical thinking, while those who have greater confidence in their own abilities are more likely to scrutinize AI-generated findings. So you have a positive correlation between higher self-confidence in your own abilities and your ability to do critical thinking while engaging with AI, while there's a negative correlation between higher confidence in generative AI and then your ability to think critically, which I saw that in action because I have, been looking for job opportunities, and I love Claude AI, for example. I mean, I think it's a great, I like the stylistically, the output that it comes with. And they say that they're the moral choice, and that's their advertising for presenting Claude as the more ethical or, responsible chatbot out there. I don't know if that's true or not, but anyway, that's their campaign. And I was applying, or I was considering applying for a role at Anthropic, the makers of Claude. And ironically, it's kind of like Steve Jobs, who banned, iPhones from his own kids. They said you can, yes, apply, but you must pledge that you're not going to use any AI on this application. And I thought that's just so ironic and so strange, that you're a company that is purporting to sell and, drive us further into AI, but you don't want people who actually are going to use AI in any way, shape, or form on their application. So that, sends kind of a mixed message to me as a consumer, and just raises these questions about what are we doing to our brains in the process. So anyway, that's, I'm happy to listen if anybody else has anything that they've found, in their organization or individually on this topic, or we could, go forward with our next question.
Actually, because I've got one that I'm really struggling with at the moment, and that's around, we're looking to use AI to extract a load of SME information from someone. So they're a guru in the business, but they hold all that information themselves. So we're going to use AI to extract that. So we were thinking, this is great. We won't need such technical engineers because AI will give them the answer. And then I had this moment of, eek, we're going to end up with people that are just going to ask AI, and then they're going to push a button with no critical thinking, no root cause analysis, nothing. So we're actually dumbing people down and not giving them the opportunity then to grow and be experts themselves. So I'm in a dilemma about it, to be honest.
And I think this is a dilemma we're going to have to face. Do we enable people to have access to all the information? But then who's going to create new information? Who's going to work out the answers to complex problems? And I don't think any of us have answers to that at the moment. I think it's a dilemma that we have to address, and each organization will probably deal with that slightly differently. Of course, if we don't capture that information from your subject matter experts and that subject matter expert leaves, then you're also in a dilemma that that information has gone from the organization, that expertise, that specialist ability. So it's a challenge. But I think it comes back to capture the information, but then help people use it with critical skills. And I think, as Joanna said, thinking about what questions to ask is actually a skill in itself. Maybe we shift our skills from holding the knowledge to being able to search for the right knowledge, to search for the right. But I still think you need underpinning that, you still need to have foundational, groundwork. And I think that will be the challenge. How do we keep the groundwork, or how do we help people develop the groundwork?
Yeah, I think it's exposing those very issues. I think those things are not being taught, like in high school, college, critical thinking, how to ask the right questions, problem solving. So I'm just of the mind that it's going to be there regardless, because it's already there. And AI is just like exposing it and heightening that this is what's going on.
I think that's so true. And these days, just one extra point, I'm thinking about, what about the need for interns? Is that completely going to go away now because people can just use AI for doing some of those really low level tasks that people used to hire interns for. And sure, maybe it's still good to have that talent pipeline, but I just worry about, again, we're always expediting things. We're always trying to find ways to work smarter, do things faster. But at the same time, there is a development process that has to take place with young adults, with, anybody who might be moving from the academic world to the professional world. So those are other questions, again, that I don't have the answer to, but I do think are they are important for us as people who are helping the world transform in this age of AI to pay attention to and to think about. So another question, Stella, that I wanted to find out from you, especially in the realm of neuroscience, is how brain science and ethical AI can revolutionize learning experiences. And anything that you've seen in context or in application in your work. And I'd love to open it up first to Stella and then everyone else.
So I think for me, it comes back to having this foundational learning in knowing what you're doing in the first place. So for me, if we want to make impactful training, we have to know what impactful training looks like. We have to know how to measure that. We have to know that what we're looking for is not more content, as you were talking about, but actually having people do the work, which starts off with you need to start off with a really firm objective. So what's the business goal? What's what we call the transfer objective? What are you actually aiming to have people do at work, not just know, but have them do? And then having a really firm kind of framework for learning. And once you've got that firm framework, then you can use the AI to support that. So as an example of the framework we use, which is a neuroscience-based framework, is the GEAR framework. And I kind of describe it as a series of cogwheels that all interconnect. And the end result you're looking for is that you have transfer, that people are able to do the job that you need them to do. And I guess even the AI maybe needs to be able to do. But that is the aim you're looking for, that people can do the thing you need them to do to help the business grow, to for their own career development as well. So that kind of personal and organizational aim. And then we need to be sure that people feel motivated to learn, because if they're not motivated, it doesn't matter how much stuff we throw at them. If that motivation is lacking, it's useless. And one of the big challenges around motivation is that it needs to be intrinsic, not extrinsic. We need to want to do it for ourselves, and finding that personal goal. And we often you'll hear tech, you'll hear AI, professionals talk about how learning is easy, but learning isn't easy. If you think about how those changes in our brains need to happen, that neuroplasticity is energy hungry, and we need to persist at it. Brains can't learn immediately. We make a connection, and if we don't reuse that connection again quickly, it's gone. The brain hasn't wasted energy holding it together. So, learning isn't always easy, and desirable difficulty is actually one of the things you want in learning. You want that kind of stretch, that challenge, that kind of forcing those, new networks together. And then what you're looking for is, you need something to initiate. Once you've got a motivated learning, you need something to initiate that learning. And that's what most organizations currently do. They give people some information, some content, some guidance, something to get them going. Then people need to start experimenting, testing. Can I do this safely in a safe environment? I don't want to be out on the road and do it yet, but can I do it in this safe environment? Whether that's a workshop or a sandbox, or just thinking about it for themselves. And the piece that's currently lacking, I think, in most organizational learning is the application. How do we help people to apply their learning in the workplace? And I think that's where AI can start to really have impact, because it can start to help you, challenge you, ask questions as you're doing your work, maybe even give feedback on what your work is doing. Because what we really want from that kind of application piece is that people have, support from managers, support from somebody else to say, yes, this is what you're doing, but actually here you could tweak it a little, and maybe AI can help there. And then the final piece of our GEAR model is the retention piece. How do we make sure that people retain the skills and knowledge for a long term? If we just test them at the moment of learning, yes, they might remember something, but the next day they'll very quickly have forgotten a lot, unless you use space practice, space repetition to actually consolidate that learning, to build those neural pathways. And AI can help all the way along there. And I think where it's helping currently, it's creating content. It's, really good at creating more content. And that's fine, so long as we limit the amount of content and we recognize that it also can help with, it can help with experimental strategies for learning. It can help create scenarios that people can work with. It can help create, how-to task lists and things like that. It can help with supporting the application into the workplace, and it can certainly help with spaced repetition. So really thinking about how we use the AI, but unless you have a good, strong, solid foundation for learning in the first place, the AI is only going to amplify what you're already doing. And if all you're doing is sharing content, yes, you'll get more content, but that's not going to solve the business problem of we need people to be able to do the job. So that gallop through that one. I think it's about having strong foundations that the AI can then amplify, make things better, but you have to have the strong foundations.
Thanks, Stella. That's really helpful, because I guess that's where I was struggling a little bit in terms of that methodology of yours, which I'm familiar with, is I think, when we create a learning experience for people, we are better at using AI for some of the content. And whilst that isn't the whole experience, I don't think we've really got to grips yet of how AI can help with that experiment and retain piece. So it's helpful to hear some thoughts there, because I think I don't think we're there yet, really. So it's good to stretch our thinking a little bit to think about how we can do that, because we've done a lot more we've done that, but not through an AI framework.
Happy to help you there always, Joanna.
Has anybody used it in a practice scenario before? I'll just give one, again, example that I have used. I had an interview in Italian, and I used to live in Italy, and I was really fluent when I lived there. But, now I'm in the US, and I just rarely use my Italian. So, I got this interview, and I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? I've said that I speak really well, and then I can, but maybe not in super technical language. And, instead of AI over there, they say EA, the opposite, and just getting it all done. So I wouldn't say, I went back to my original level, but I did use ChatGPT to just talk to me, with my multimodal, voice over the course of 24 hours, 48 hours, to just get me, feeling a little bit more comfortable again and in the rhythm of the language. So that is like a game changer for me in terms of language practice, which, these days you don't even need to speak another language, first of all, because of English, as most people speak English, but then you've got all these translation tools and interpreter tools. But it was helpful for me to, again, try to retain some of my agency of being a foreign language speaker and not just completely giving over that task to AI. But, say, hey, this is something that I'm interested in and I want to keep upskilling myself on. And so it did help me, to your point, Geneva, as a tool in that case to maintain that. So just curious if anybody else has used it kind of in that practical way to brush up on skills or to learn new applications.
Yeah, I'm using it for everything. I would say, like, in the last week, what have I done? I use it to build my presentation decks. I'm a speaker, so I'm always needing decks, and I don't have time to create decks. So I use a tool called Gamma.
Yeah.
It can make a deck in, I don't know, 2 minutes. It also makes websites and other things. But so creating decks, practicing for speaking engagements. Like you said, Sarah, using it for like that talking communication partner. There are some apps that you can use to practice your speaking before you go to the speaking event or before you
Right.
have the speaking event. You can practice with it. It even like grades your speaking for that day. And then what else have I done in the last week? Practice for interviews. There are a few tools that you can practice before you go to a job interview with AI. So I've done that as well in the last week.
Yeah.
Experimenting with using it for role play. And actually,
Yes.
it's interesting. If you give it some good parameters, you can ask it to role play with you, difficult conversations or listening skills. I had a great time getting it to, really help me improve my listening skills. And I told it, I decided to play with it and be a bit cruel. And I kept trying to, take it off track. But because I told it, please keep me on track, it was really polite. And when I said things like, well, can we go to the zoo instead? It would say that I'm very interested that, to hear that you wish to go to the zoo. However, what really good at keeping me on track. So I think given the right prompt, it could be used really well for that, experimental part of learning for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
I'm very conscious of time, Sarah.
I know. Yes, please. I was just seeing the other things in the chat. Please ask me my question.
Yeah. So I think the question I wanted to ask you, Sarah, was about how to what strategies you would use to create adaptive learning. And I think you've got about 2 minutes to answer that question. So apologies.
Yeah, no worries. I think what's more interesting is the conversation and just hearing voices from people in the field, what they're doing. I do think with AI, the personalization that you can get is and that adaptation that we've even just been talking about with the role play and having it not only take from, if you're using a foundational model, obviously it's going to take its knowledge from the entire internet per se, but you can then fine tune your foundation model so that it is just focusing very, very narrowly on a particular area. So, read what you're saying, like maybe it's just privacy law. And you really need to create, maybe you have some sort of, I don't know, dissertation or something that you're doing a PhD or who knows what it is. And you really need to go deep into that particular area. And you're coming up with unique ideas or things that are intrinsic to you. It also, in a corporate environment, it has the ability to hook up, obviously, to individual data, customer data in a CRM or, to proprietary corporate IP through a knowledge base with retrieval augmented generation to get the most up-to-date information. So there are so many ways to make that personal to the user. And that is really exciting because you can create these AI tutors and thinking about in, education and really help even people. I think one of the way I first saw AI being used was in accessibility when I worked at Lighthouse International with screen readers, for example. So it opens up a wide door to help the people of different abilities, who are diverse in different ways. And that is one of the, I think the North Stars of AI for good. And so that's something I'm really excited about, to personalize that. And I know we are short on time. So Stella, I'll let you decide what we want to do, because I know we were going to end at 1:45. So
I've got another call I need to attend. So I think the last thing we just wanted to perhaps get from all of you would just be really, perhaps in the chat, you can just tell us what you've got from this conversation. And then we've got a couple of resources that, we want to share with you that you can follow up on. You can certainly have a conversation with us, but it'd be great to just see in the chat there what you've taken from this conversation.
And I'll try to put up the slide with our contact information and the resource. If I can get our share going on here. Are you seeing the slide?
Not yet.
No? Okay. Let me figure that out then. Let me move these things. Share. Maybe I need to share a different. Okay, what about now?
You can see it now. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, perfect. All
So
right.
the chat, what you've perhaps picked up from this conversation. That would be great to see. Geneva using the GEAR framework, experimental learning strategies. Oh, good. That's really good. Yeah, I really enjoyed hearing the other experiences too. Excellent. And action there, Joanna. That's always what we want to hear from these things. People who are going to take action. That's perfect. Well trained, I'd say.
Well, I do hope that we could stay in touch. I know I'm connected with some of you on LinkedIn. I did put my LinkedIn in the chat. I'd love to connect with the rest of the people here. And I think these are really compelling conversations we should keep having, even as a group or on individual levels, and helping each other navigate these questions that we have that are exciting, but also sometimes a little bit I don't know what the word might be to describe how they, a little bit overwhelming about how to deal with these technological advancements.
So thank you all very much. Yes, please do stay in touch, get in touch with each other, get in touch with us on LinkedIn. We will eventually get around to putting the video up on YouTube. I think we're going to put it, so it's available there if you want to share it with colleagues and friends. And yeah, stay in touch, because if we can run some more of these, I think that would be a really useful activity. Thank you for your inputs. Those were really, really helpful, and it was really nice because we kind of had a structured approach, but I really like the fact that we just ended up having open and honest conversation, which I think is where we need to go. As humans, that's what we need to do. So thank you all very much. It was a pleasure meeting you all, and we hope to hear from you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.